Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the potential impending shock to the system that awaits a number of British businesses as a result of Brexit still being done very slowly over a period of several years. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So when it comes to doing business post-Brexit, businesses essentially had two major problems. One, the problems that come with Brexit trade barriers, tariffs potentially, more paperwork certainly, some goods needing different labelling, some goods not being allowed at all, checks and so on. But then there's a second set of problems as well, that is not knowing how your business is affected and what it needs to do. So it's all very well the government saying that businesses needed to inform themselves last year. It's incredibly complicated. See, the purpose of the EU, in direct contradiction to Brexiteer lies, is to reduce red tape, for their members, largely to zero in many cases. So someone setting up a business in the UK a few years ago only really had to worry about knowing their market, which was huge, spanning hundreds of millions of potential customers, therefore making it easier to sell as well. And when it came to dispatching the goods, for example, it was generally as simple to send it to Antwerp as it was to Manchester. Now it's rather more complicated. See, there are pages and pages of new red tape for a business to familiarise themselves with that simply didn't exist before. Or rather, it did exist, but not for them. And the government did almost nothing to prepare these businesses for the changes. So the fact of the matter is that a business in the UK over the past few decades that traded with the EU, that had customers either, just entirely in the single market, didn't actually need to know how to export because it was sort of taken care for them. So they've had to spend, the government has had to spend most of the pre-Brexit period pretending that everything was going to be brilliant, because if they laid on the doom and gloom too thickly, if they talked about all the problems that businesses are going to have, people might have started to smell a rat at a time when it may still have been possible to put the brakes on at least the hardest form of Brexit. But there was another interesting dimension to this as well. So last year, I recall, the government talking about a shock and awe campaign. They'd ripped us out of the EU with their lies. In the second half of the year, they'd also sailed past the date for extending the transition period. No more need for lies. Talk was of trying to limit the chaos by making sure companies now knew how to cope come January the 1st. It was fine now. No one could do anything to stop our hard Brexit. Let's limit the damage of it. So the government commissioned a campaign team to basically panic businesses into sorting themselves out. But it never really happened. Now, I'm going to guess that the government changed tack after seeing that the pandemic would suppress trade anyway, and they could blame any damage on that. But January the 1st arrived, a lot of businesses fell foul of the new way of trading. In some cases, I absolutely accept that businesses didn't do enough to prepare. For example, it will confuse me to my dying day why mollusk farmers thought they'd be able to sell their shellfish in the EU when the rules for third countries are very clearly against it. Trying to argue that they believed our lying Tory government that they had special exemption, even though they couldn't show them it in writing, only made them look even sillier. Not that there was anything they could really do about it. Doesn't matter how gullible they were. I mean, some in the industry knew what was going on. They knew what was happening, but they still suffered alongside everyone else. But in many cases, it simply wasn't reasonable for businesses to prepare for trading terms that were only finalised a week before they went live. But the businesses that have struggled are getting on top of things now. Doesn't mean it's back to normal, as the government would have you believe. Of course it isn't. We have trade barriers in place now, which makes selling harder. Some companies have had to limit what they can trade. Some have had to stop trading with the EU altogether. In some cases, this has meant they've had to stop trading because their business is knackered. But the point is that those that can continue are getting used to it. But then there's going to be another shock coming, and it could be even worse than January, because Brexit isn't done. It didn't get done last January when we left the EU. It didn't get done this January when we left the customs union single market. The reason we described a hard Brexit as a cliff edge for so long is because that's exactly what it is. So what Johnson did, his cunning plan, was I'm going to build in a load of rough stairs so that we can go over the cliff in a series of bumps as opposed to one big splat. The system that businesses have had to learn to cope with until now are not Brexit as it's going to be for the future. That's just the first phase. We've got more coming. And a trade expert has been pointing out that the customs declarations are coming. They also point out that many businesses aren't aware of this. They have no idea that they've even been deferring customs declarations. And this is what could make it worse than in January. See, even if businesses that didn't do enough to inform themselves still knew that Brexit was coming, and they knew it would affect them somehow, even if they didn't quite know how. Or at least the ones run by people with brains knew that Brexit was coming. But if they're these businesses who aren't aware there's more to come, well, that could be quite a big shock to the system. A completely unexpected shock to the system as well, unlike Brexit. And where's the campaign from the government to warn businesses of this? I've not seen it. I even talked about this last year. The government deferred as much of Brexit as they could in January for both political and economic reasons. Economic because businesses would have collapsed under the weight of all the new systems if they were piled in on one go, especially as very few businesses knew what they were doing. And political because it would have been impossible to hide the impact of Brexit if this had occurred. So because the government aren't that bothered about what comes into the country, which is odd given their Brexit rhetoric about borders, they just deferred declarations. But they are due. You can't just not have customs declarations. And they're due in a few weeks. See, this trade expert, Dr. Anna Javeska, is concerned that if businesses were not aware of this, they will not have kept the records necessary in order to fill out these declarations this month. Now, from a political point of view, if you were such a business just finding this out, you might hope that you were in strong company. Because if it affects a few businesses, they're going to be clobbered by this, because HMRC is going to be saying, right, where's your customs declarations for the last 6 months? My what? What? Oh, crap. I ain't got any records. I can't even just do them now. Okay, we're in trouble. But if it's a lot of companies, then the government may well have to turn a blind eye to it, as it would be an incredibly bad look for Brexit in general if they were to try and go after so many businesses, especially as those businesses would band together and attack the situation in the media. And it might be a bit odd that businesses wouldn't have been aware of this. After all, if some gobshite astrophysicist who's never traded anything in his life knew about this, why wouldn't people who actually make their living out of trading with the EU? Well, on the one hand, yes, I think some business owners have just been glib when it comes to learning how trade as a third country works. They've been warned for years by people that this is going to be a huge shock to the system. And there are some business owners that just thought, oh, the government said it's going to be fine, so we'll not worry about it. Or we'll worry about it when it comes. What? You know, they've had years to learn the basics. On the other hand, being an internet gobshite is my job now, and I've had a long time for the past year and a half to read into quite a bit of detail on Brexit, whereas someone trading, who arguably has more need of that knowledge, spends their day trying to sell their goods and supply their customers, not reading through government websites for needles in haystacks. So it could well be that a whole load of company bosses face a few sleepless nights waiting to see if HMRC will turn a blind eye to their boobery. After all, it's not like the government made sure they understood the situation. But even if they get away with this, the full declaration system is still coming online. They are still going to have to learn how to comply in the future, and that compliance still takes the form of filling, well, forms. More paperwork on top of the already soul-sapping bureaucracy that Brexit has already delivered to them. Fun times. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.